So welcome to this very special Her Platform workshop. Today we have a very special guest, Alisha Kruger, joining us, who is based on the Gold Coast. And we've been quite excited to have Alisha come and run a workshop for us for some time, and we're blessed to have her come and join us today. So a little bit about Alisha. Alisha is a menstrual coach, menstrual cycle coach and holistic pelvic care practitioner. She supports women who are ready to reclaim their cycles as a source of power, reconnect with their inner wisdom, and embody their most radiant selves. Alisha works with women through online courses and coaching one-on-one, in-person workshops, and healing sessions in her Gold Coast clinic. So welcome, Alisha. It's exciting to have you here with us today.
It's exciting to be here. We've been talking about this for so long now.
And isn't it beautiful that we can actually have this space to talk about periods?
It is. It's so exciting to me to see how the openness around the menstrual cycle and periods is becoming so much more prevalent. I'm seeing the conversations everywhere now, and maybe it's kind of partly because that's the space that I'm in, but I feel that there's been a huge shift, especially in the last couple of years.
I was going to ask you that. I was thinking, what do you think the catalyst for change has been? Is it social media, or is it just that you think there's been a movement for women just trying to empower themselves and their bodies?
I think a bit of both. I think social media definitely makes the information more available to those who are curious, and even to those who maybe don't, it hasn't occurred to them to be curious about their cycles. To see other women speaking about their cycles so openly, for me, the cycle is just a part of it. The cycle is kind of the outward manifestation of the conversation that's going on around women are sick of being burnt out all the time. They're sick of not having energy. They're sick of trying to, strive for success in the masculine way and not listening to their bodies and ending up with adrenal fatigue, period pain. So the cycle stuff is almost the symptom. It's not really about the cycle. It's about women wanting to get to know themselves better. It's about women wanting to feel empowered, to feel radiant, to feel energized, to not have to feel crazy 10 days of the month. And so, I know for me, I decided to come off the pill at 20, and I didn't really know a whole lot about the menstrual cycle, or even I sort of learned a little bit about how the pill was interacting with my body. But for me, the pull was, I saw these women talking about, living in their feminine and how beautiful that was and how connected they felt to themselves and their bodies. And I wanted that, and I wouldn't have known that was possible without social media. So social media kind of opens our eyes to another experience that could be possible for us as women, I think, and then obviously definitely makes it easier for us to learn as well.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. I think about the concept of it always have been so taboo, and what we did learn was always from, say, our parents. Say our mother would tell us everything we needed to know about our period, or not. Maybe she didn't tell us much at all. And in lots of cases, that limited or lack of information kept it so taboo. So seeing it communicated about more is definitely empowering, and it's quite exciting as well.
And I think one of the biggest problems, because my parents are really open, and I compared to my friends, I knew a lot about periods, and I used to read all the magazines like Dolly, Cosmo. I got them every month, so I thought that I was well informed. And looking back at it now, so much of the education that we receive as young women is coming from a space of being afraid of our bodies and not trusting our own bodies. We should be afraid of getting STIs. We should be afraid of getting pregnant. We don't get taught that we can't even get pregnant all the time. We can only get pregnant a few days of the month. And so it really feeds into this culture of women being at war with their bodies and seeing their periods and their cycles as a curse, an inconvenience, something to be ashamed of, something that slows them down or stops them from, succeeding at the same rate as men. And that's the conversation that is really exciting for me to see starting to shift. Not starting to, it's picking up more momentum. I know women who've been doing this work for, decades. It feels like it's sort of all happening at once, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. So talk to us a little bit more about your role as a menstrual coach. What do you do, and how do we even start to understand our menstrual cycle?
So that's a big question. Yeah, I sort of describe what I do around the menstrual cycle as like holistic menstrual cycle education. So I guess if you were to jump in one of my courses or work with me, we would talk a little bit about, what's actually going on in your body during your cycle and the reproductive system and the hormones. But that's such a small piece. Like, that's the foundational stuff, because I feel like we need to understand how our bodies work. But we're also looking at the menstrual cycle from a like emotional, energetic, creative cycle. Like, how does the menstrual cycle affect our our energy levels? How does it affect our emotional well-being? How does it affect whether we feel like we want to be really social that day or whether we need time for ourselves? How does it affect our confidence, our inner critic? How extroverted we feel, how articulate we feel on any given day. Our hormones are changing every day of our cycle, and that influences the version of ourselves that we're going to show up as on that day. And like, all the versions of us are beautiful. It's just that kind of superwoman energy that we feel around ovulation, which is a more, masculine, I can give my energy really generously and take everything off my to-do list. That energy is very celebrated in our culture. And so we're not really taught that there's value in the other times of our cycle where we perhaps have lower energy, feel a little more inward, feel a little slower. And so part of it is kind of teaching women that there's beauty in the whole cycle, and like, teaching women to really work with the ebbs and flows and the strengths and vulnerabilities. So harnessing the strengths that you have at each phase of the cycle, and then supporting yourself through any vulnerabilities, because being a woman can feel really unpredictable, but it's actually not. Like, if you start tracking your cycle, you'll see that the patterns that occur month after month are usually very predictable, and they might be, slightly individual for each woman, but it allows us to really, sync our self-care, like our exercise, the food that we're eating, whether or not we say yes to 8 social commitments that weekend. Like, it just allows us to make those little changes that, are going to give us more energy, a little more flow, a little more ease to feel at home within ourselves. And the practice of menstrual cycle awareness really, in my experience, allows women to feel really connected to their bodies, to lead from the inside out. Like, rather than looking constantly outside ourselves for the answers, what should I do? What should I eat? What kind of exercise should I do? It's coming in here first. How do I feel? What does my body need? What is my intuition telling me? So it's really a homecoming for a lot of women. And I'm not really teaching anyone anything they don't already know. Like, when I teach women about their cycles, the kind of response that I get is like, oh, that makes so much sense, because they're already experiencing it. It's just that they're not paying enough attention to it, that it feels predictable, or that they can really harness it to their advantage.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. It's like coming into flow with nature. And I think we look at nature and see the cycles that nature goes through, and then we look at ourselves and we tend to maybe push in one form of nature and forget about all the other cycles. And as you said, that the masculine energy of pushing in and not actually taking the time to pause and listen to the needs and the desires of our body. And I feel like once we tap into that flow, the rhythm, it's just, life is easier, everything's easier, and our connection with self is much more beautiful. But how do we actually begin to do that? Like, if we're not even in tune at all, and we're just sort of going through the motions, which a lot of us are, how do we start to begin to kind of create more awareness and tap into the cycles and the rhythm of our own bodies?
So the first step would be to start to track your own cycle. And Gail's just popped in the question, how do I feel about cycle tracking apps? There are so many, but my suggestion is always to, like, I love a journaling practice, and I actually have also a free cycle tracker that I've created that I can send to you, that you can give out to all the women, because the cycle tracking apps are great in some ways, but there's like a whole piece that I feel like a lot of them are missing. Like, they might be asking you, what kind of exercise did you do today, and did you have any premenstrual symptoms, but they're not asking you questions like, you know, what nourished you today? What depleted you today? How did you feel emotionally? Like, did you notice yourself being more reactive? Did you notice yourself feeling more sensitive? What tasks came really easily to you at work today, and what felt really challenging? Because different things will come easily to us at different times in the cycle. So we, like, from my perspective, I think we get to be looking at the physical, emotional, energetic, and mental, because when we recognize those things, not only does it allow us to see patterns over time, but also it's that process of on the day checking in and going, how am I feeling today? Like, how am I feeling emotionally today? How am I feeling energetically today? Do I feel like I want to be around people, or do I want to be alone? What kinds of foods am I craving? And it's not just kind of popping it in an app at the end of the day and then sort of looking at it retrospectively to see the patterns, which there's value in that. I'm not saying there's not, but I just think if you're curious about like living life in a more feminine flow and creating more ease and knowing yourself more and being able to like really align your self-care throughout your cycle to feel like the best version of you, putting pen to paper and going a little deeper is really powerful. And it doesn't mean it's a huge practice. Like, I have a 1-page sheet on the cycle tracker, which you'll see, and it's just like, it's short answers, it's bullet points. It doesn't have to be like an hour-long exercise. It can take you 5 minutes, but it just allows you to go a little deeper, which over the long run, I think is a lot more beneficial. The other thing I'll say about cycle tracking apps is, like, make sure you're not using them to tell you when you're fertile or not, because an app can't predict ovulation. It'll make a guesstimate based on what your last cycles were, but it can't know for you. So that's the only other thing I'll say on that.
That's a good point to know. And I think you're right. I think cycle tracking apps are great for anyone who wants to start the process and isn't really sure. But if you, as you mentioned, we can go deeper. We can always go deeper into that self-awareness and self-care practices that we create. If someone was using your tracker, how long would they need to use it to get a pretty good idea around what's going on for them?
I mean, I usually suggest 3 months. I think by the time you've been through 3 cycles, you'll start to see some pretty clear patterns. But, you know, right away, even if you've only been doing it for a few days, just that practice of checking in with yourself and paying attention, that's going to start to yield results right away. Because when you take that time to slow down just for a moment, to ask yourself how you're feeling and what you need, even if you can just make a little adjustment to how you're, like, the choices that you're making throughout your day. Like, maybe it's a choice of one meal over another at a cafe. Maybe it's a choice of, you know, skipping the gym and going to yoga. Maybe it's that you feel really social and you're craving connection, and so you're going to call a friend and meet them after work instead of doing something by yourself. Like, there are just these little things that we can do from the get-go, but we have to be asking ourselves, and that's where that daily practice is really powerful. And what I find is that it starts to become second nature, not just in your dedicated, you know, 10 minutes of journaling, but you'll find yourself checking in with you, like, before you choose what you want to eat, before you choose your exercise, like in the morning, checking in, oh, how's my body feeling today? And it becomes really a habit of having that constant conversation with yourself, and that's a game changer.
It definitely is a game changer. So let's kind of go back to basics, and I want to go back to basics because I feel like there is a missing, there is a knowledge gap, and then some of us know more than others. So going back to basics and thinking about a woman's cycle, you know, it's split into different kind of mini cycles within that cycle. Can you explain kind of what that looks like as an average, I guess?
Yeah, absolutely. So different people will teach the cycle within from a slightly different lens. I love the framework of the inner seasons. So I talk about, I learned this framework from Red School. I have 2 women in England who are amazing, who kind of coined the term menstrual cycle awareness. And the inner seasons framework talks about the 4 seasons, which are the same as the seasons in nature. So you're in a winter, spring, summer, and autumn, and I'll go a little more in depth in those in a moment. But the reason why I really love this is because it reminds us that we're really connected to nature. Like, we're cyclical, just like the earth is cyclical, just like the moon is cyclical, the seasons are cyclical, and that in itself is really powerful medicine, in my opinion. The other thing is that it reminds us that we are actually in a cycle. Like when we talk about the more, I guess, clinical terms to describe the phases of the cycle, menstruation, follicular phase, ovulation, luteal phase, those are important to know, I think, and to understand what's actually going on in your body. But when it comes to your daily cycle awareness practice, the inner seasons really reminds us that we're not just, now we're in one phase, now we're in another, now we're in another. It's not these cut and dry 4 phases. Every single day we're changing, just like it's not summer one day and autumn the next. You know, it's this gradual shifts day by day. And so we get to be checking in every day. The inner seasons also really give us already clues as to how we might feel in those times of our cycle. So in a winter, for example, is your period. Winter is a time, slower energy, turning more inward. You're probably wanting to, you know, go into hibernation a bit, and you're wanting to eat warming foods, whereas summer is like, you know, it's warm, you want to be out, you want to be social, there's this more like playful extroverted energy, and that's your ovulation. So even if that's all you knew, you would already be like having some clues as to what you might be experiencing at that time in your cycle, and also how you could nourish yourself. So is it helpful if I touch a little on the 4 seasons and what you expect to experience?
Yeah, definitely.
Perfect. So day 1 of your cycle, start with super basics because I get this question a lot. Day 1 of your cycle is the first day of your period. So not the first day of spotting, the first day where you have like full flow and you need to use a menstrual cup or a pad or a tampon. So that's day 1, and that's the start of your inner winter, the start of a new cycle. So your inner winter will last for as long as your period lasts for. That might be 3 to 5 days, maybe a little more, a little less. And I want to sort of preface this by saying, I'm going to say like, oh, roughly this day of your cycle, roughly that day, but we're all different. Like my cycle might be 33 days and yours, an average cycle for you might be 26. So yes, there are averages as to what's healthy, but there's a whole lot of variance also within that. So know that, you know, I'm not saying it has to be that. So your inner winter, as I said, your period, that's the time in your cycle where all your hormonal levels are at their lowest. Your energy is probably feeling quite low. Your body is releasing. So it's, you know, because we're shedding a lot of blood, we can feel quite low energy, and we want to make sure we're nourishing ourselves really well during that time. It's also the time where you're probably finding you crave a lot of time alone. You just kind of want to turn inward. Ideal life would be just like being in bed and chilling for the first 2 or 3 days of your cycle. And like, it's okay to slow down during that time. And that may not mean a whole day off. That may mean you skip the gym that day. That may mean you order dinner or ask a partner to cook so that you have one less thing to do. It may mean you don't do the washing that day, or you go to bed 15 minutes earlier. Like there are just these little adjustments that we can make to weave in a little more space, a little more rest. And just my advice on that one is to tell you, however much time you have to rest and slow down during your inner winter, especially on those first 2 to 3 days, make sure you're really resting. Like if you only have 10 minutes, lie down on your bed and close your eyes with your hands on your womb and just really stop. It's not 10 minutes of watching Netflix. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, pleasure is great and play and relaxation are great. But in your inner winter, if you're short on space for yourself, make sure you're making that space as deeply restful and nourishing as possible. Could be a bath, could be a nap, could be a meditation, could be sitting with a cup of tea and just drinking your cup of tea and doing nothing else. Like, it's just giving these moments of stillness. And the rewards of that are like really like so much. Like, firstly, you're giving your body the space to slow down, and so you're not going to be feeling that like resentment and frustration and burnout that we can often feel when we go against our body signals to slow down. Secondly, the more you rest and honor your energy in your inner winter, the less premenstrual symptoms you'll experience in your next cycle. So how you treat and nourish yourself during your period is going to set you up for your whole cycle. If you're pushing through the first 21 days of your cycle, of course you're going to crash and burn and experience PMS in the last week of your cycle. Like, it'll catch up with you at some point. So know that rest is not lazy. Rest is honoring your body. Rest is making sure your body's going to thrive throughout the whole cycle. And the other beautiful thing about this is that your inner winter is also the time where you're really connected to your intuition and your inner wisdom. Like you'll feel it, like you've really kind of turned away from the outside world and turned in. And giving yourself those little pockets of rest and space is also going to allow you to tap into that. So if there's, you know, a creative project that you want to plan, or something in your life that you've been looking for answers for, or you're just wanting a bit more clarity, give yourself a little space in your inner winter to do a meditation, or just be and let your thoughts drift and see what unfolds, because there's a lot of magic available to us during this time. So yeah, winter is all about rest, receiving, nourishing yourself in whatever way you can within the commitments that you have, making sure you're eating really well, having like warming, grounding foods. Cold foods will exacerbate cramping. It's not the time to be doing like HIIT workouts or going for a run. You want to be resting, maybe doing some yin yoga. I find usually around day 4 or 5, I might want to do like a little more of a vinyasa flow class, or maybe like a Pilates class or something like that. But just allow yourself to rest and know that there will be other times in the cycle where your energy will be really high. So that's the first season, and one that I think a lot of us find challenging to embrace. I know that I did. You know, if you're listening to everything I just said and being like, you know, that's fine for you, like you make it sound so easy. It wasn't for a long time. Like I was that person who was super type A, went to the gym every day no matter how I was feeling, had really strict rules around what I could eat, had no idea what my body actually wanted. And it was a big learning curve for me to start to embrace that. And what I tell my clients is, it will be uncomfortable at first. You will experience resistance. Your mind might tell you things like you're being lazy, you should be doing this, you're falling behind, what will other people think of you, all of this. And like that's normal. And know that with a little bit of practice, you'll build a new bank of evidence around, no, I know that when I do this, I'm a better, you know, partner, wife, mother, because I feel more nourished. I know that when I do this, I thrive more throughout my cycle because I don't have PMS. I know that when I do this and I take the time to check in, then my life is more intentional. Like you'll start to build those new beliefs, but you have to practice it first. So I promise it does get easier.
Yeah, that really resonates with me, because I certainly can understand that I've tended to push through in all cycles. So, you know, busyness and doing all of these things that I want to achieve and get done, and then realizing that it's like walking through mud at those periods of time. It's just like an effort, and it's really draining, and I'm not happy, but I'm doing it because I feel like there's expectations on me to do it. And it's such a beautiful awareness once we shift that and go, hang on, maybe it's better for me to actually listen to this and practice some self-care right now.
Mm-hmm. And you know, that's such a really important point, and there are a few things that I want to say on that. The first is that when you ask for what you need, firstly, you're telling other people what you need. Secondly, you're giving other people permission to ask for what they need. Like I had a conversation the other day. I was supposed to have a call with a friend of mine. She wanted advice around something in her business. And she texted me on the day. She said, hey, Leash, I'm on day 2 of my cycle. My energy's really low. She's got a 6-month-old. She's like, I'm just taking all of my energy to parent. Like I just can't jump on the call today. And I was like, of course, like no drama whatsoever. And I know that if it were the other way around, I could say that to her as well. I mean, I'll say that to anyone, but women will easily drop their cycles into conversation with me. You know, I was making plans with a friend for next week, and she's like, I'm going to be in my inner winter, so can we do like the end of the week when I come into my inner spring? You know, it should be a normal conversation like that. It shouldn't be a huge deal for us to ask for what we want and need. And we've been taught that as women, we have to martyr ourselves all the time. We should be burnt out. We should be busy. You know, the whole busy is a badge of honor thing. And that was me for a long time. And I'm still untangling some like residual like pieces of that for sure, because it's huge. What was the other thing I was going to say? I'm trying to think. Oh, yeah. So I think this piece of information helps a lot of women who are wanting to sort of make that shift in perspective, because our brains like to have evidence, right? So if you're watching this, I want you to know that we as women have a 28 to 30-ish day hormonal cycle, right? Men have a 24-hour hormonal cycle. So men are roughly experiencing the same like cocktail of hormones at the same time every day, which means that they thrive, generally speaking, doing the same thing at the same time, waking up at the same time, going to the gym at the same time, eating the same things at the same time, and that's great. We're not men. That's not our cycle. And we've spent our whole lives thinking that that cycle is superior. We should be operating that way and trying to fit ourselves into that way of being. And then that's why I think so many women are wanting to learn about their cycles, because they're going, it's not working for me. Like, I've tried it for 5 years, 10 years, 30 years, and I'm just sick of being burnt out and frustrated and resentful all the time. And know that, like, yes, our cycle may be longer, and yes, there may be times when we have lower energy and don't feel as like outwardly productive. But 30 cycles over 30 days and one cycle over 30 days, in 30 days it evens out and it's the same. So like, I know my partner, like when he comes home from work, he just wants to chill and do nothing, and that's like his kind of like winter period in the day, right? And so it all evens out. Like, there are times in the cycle where you'll be able to tick off 20 things on your to-do list and have dinner with your friends and be generous with your kids and do the grocery shopping, like literally get everything done one day and go to the gym every day that week. And that's great. And also there's beauty in the slower times. And, we've touched on that a little bit already, but know that our cycles we're not wired for the same cycle as men. And that's okay. One is not better or worse. It's just that our society is set up for one and not the other. And so it can feel really challenging.
Yeah, I love that. It's so powerful to just have that awareness and acceptance that we are different and we do have different cycles and different rhythms. And then, so we've moved through the inner winter and we come into the inner spring. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so spring is your follicular phase. So that's when you finish your period and it's in the lead up to ovulation. So that might start around day 6 of your cycle and take you up to, say, day 11, 12. Again, depends on your unique cycle. And this is when like the lining of your uterus is building. So everything's building, everything's about like momentum. Your energy will rise every day, your physical energy, your focus, how extroverted you feel, everything is sort of building up to this peak of ovulation. So you'll notice that, you're getting more energetic, you're feeling more, extroverted, you're feeling more, women will find during this phase, they feel really naturally motivated because they've sort of, and this again, if you're taking some space for yourself during your inner winter, you've rested a little bit, you've replenished your energy, you've maybe gotten a little bit of clarity around what your intentions are for the cycle, your goals or what you want to create this cycle. And again, taking that bird's eye view of what I want to create or achieve this month rather than today or this week, that perspective shift will change a lot for most women. And so in a spring phase, this is a time where the energy is building, and so we're starting to take action. We're really feeling like we can, get stuff done. We can start to, initiate a project or, start a new exercise class or learn something new. It's really a time of new beginnings, like initiation, starting things, growth. And women will find that like you generally feel more resilient during this time. You don't have your inner critic is quiet, unlike in your premenstrual phase. You feel pretty optimistic, pretty confident, pretty self-assured. And so you can really utilize that energy to take risks, to step outside your comfort zone, to start new things, whether that is starting a new work project. Like back when I was doing graphic design full time, I would always try and start my projects just after my period, because I knew that then I had, my whole cycle, and I was really optimizing that energy of that spring to plan and research and initiate and, play with different ideas, because spring has this really playful energy. So it's a time to like go on an adventure with your partner or your kids, or go to that like dance class that you've been wanting to try for ages, or if you're wanting to, make shifts in the way that you're eating, like starting any kind of habit, spring is a great time to do it because you're primed for it and it's more likely to stick and to really, you're more likely to thrive in that new pattern and habit if you start at the time in the cycle. So yeah, your energy really gradually builds during this season. which is beautiful, and know it's gradually building. So like, just because your period finished yesterday doesn't mean you're now ovulating and you have all the energy in the world. Like if you're on day 6, 7 of your cycle, you've just finished bleeding and you're in that early spring, think of yourself as like, you know, a tender new rosebud that's on a tree. Like it needs to be protected, it needs to be nurtured, it can't just be like exposed to all the elements. It's not in full bloom yet. So go a little gently with yourself. Like a common thing that I hear is that you know, women in this early time of spring, just after their period, can feel a little more inclined toward overwhelm and anxiety, because this is my theory anyway, it's sort of this feeling of you've come out of this this like sort of cave of hibernation and you're in a winter and your energy's starting to rise, but you still feel kind of like you want to be chilling and resting, and maybe you feel like, oh, I slowed down and my to-do list is backed up and I should be getting into things, and so we sort of overextend ourselves too far too soon. And again, it's that thing of recognizing that our energy is building gradually and that we need to pace ourselves. So that can be a tender time in the cycle, similar to the premenstrual phase. Not for all women, but for some. I know it definitely is for me, so that's something to be aware of. But yeah, spring is new beginnings, starting things, whether it's a habit, a project, whatever, being playful, allowing your energy to kind of, like build at its own pace, and just really enjoying the natural motivation and optimism and resilience that comes with being in your inner spring.
I'm loving the reference between the seasons, because it makes so much more sense that way. Like I can visualize it, I can actually feel it and see it. I love the reference of it.
Yeah. No, spring is great. Like spring is really, it's all about like desire and dynamic energy and playfulness, and even just knowing that, like how many of us really prioritize play in our lives, and knowing that in that season of your cycle, you're more hormonally primed to be a little more playful, to take a little more risk. So take advantage of that. Like try the new thing, do the thing that's outside your comfort zone, because you know, that stuff's like fun. Like that's the magic of life. And most of us really don't prioritize that.
But that little piece of knowledge alone, like, you know, if we have been looking at that dance class or doing something a bit different, and then we go and schedule to do it in a winter, and then we beat ourselves up because we really don't feel like doing it and we don't go.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that alone is almost magic, because we can actually start to really set ourselves up for success rather than setting ourselves up for failure.
I was chatting to a friend the other day, and she said she remembered reading in like one of those magazines when she was a teenager, the best time to start any new habit is when you have your period. And so as a teenager, she would be like trying to start a new exercise, you know, starting going to the gym or starting a new diet or whatever, and not realizing why she was failing all the time. And so like it's so powerful to know how to set ourselves up for success as women, because most women are so hard on themselves, and we don't need another reason to feel like we're failing. You're not failing. Like your body, your biology is perfect. It's just that you don't know how to fully harness it yet.
Yeah, absolutely right. I feel like we have this amazing tool, and yet we're not using it the right way because we don't have the knowledge. And that's the beauty of this kind of work, is that once we start to learn it and tap in a little bit more, we just start to really feel like we can support ourselves and get the most out of what we're trying to do, which is beautiful.
Your cycle is your blueprint for how to thrive as a woman in all areas of life. Absolutely. And it like blows my mind that we're not. I mean, imagine if we learned this when we were 12, 13. Imagine if it was modeled to us by all the adult women around us. Like life would be completely different.
It would be, and I guess that's the beauty of the power of now, is that it may not have been an option for us, but it's certainly an option for future generations, whether they be our own children or nieces or friends and things. I think it's beautiful that we now have this ability to share this knowledge and can help future generations. Yeah, you're right. I would have loved this when I was 13 to 15 and learning about my body. It would have been so powerful.
Absolutely.
So
So
let's go on to, so
back
we've
into
gone through the sort of, inner winter, inner spring, now we're into, I'm guessing, summer.
summer. So summer is the season of the peak of the cycle, ovulation. So your actual ovulation only lasts like 24 to 36 hours, but the energy of your inner summer is about a week. So generally that inner summer feeling will start 3 to 5 days before ovulation, usually when you're moving into that fertile window of your cycle where you're starting to see that fertile cervical fluid, that kind of egg white texture that we get. And then the inner summer kind of will end maybe a couple of days after ovulation. So this is the superwoman phase of the cycle. Our body is fertile, it wants us to make a baby, so we're super energized, we're extroverted, we're confident, we're magnetic, we feel more attractive, our faces become more symmetrical. You'll notice your hair is shinier, it doesn't get oily as quickly, like your skin is clearer, you just feel amazing. You feel sexy and magnetic if all your hormones are in balance and your body is actually ovulating, but that's a whole nother conversation. So you may not want to make a baby. So how, the question that I always ask my clients is, you've got this like beautiful magnetic overflowing energy where your superpowers are connection, confidence, communication. So you'll feel really articulate. You'll be comfortable being seen. Like that's the time when I love to schedule a lot of like workshops and speaking things, because I enjoy speaking during that time. I enjoy being on a stage or being in front of a camera. My words flow really easily. I feel really concise and articulate, and I love being around other people. That's the time where you want to be networking, you want to be having a dinner party, whereas other times in the cycle you might want to say just hang out with one or two friends at a time. So ask yourself, if baby making isn't on the cards for you, like how do you want to harness this energy? Because our tendency is to give it away to everyone else and to prioritize everybody else's needs, because we haven't actually checked in to go, well, what do I want to do with this energy? Which area of my life do I want to nourish? And for example, it could be I'm creating a course in my business this month, and that's what I'm going to pour all my creative energy into. It could be I'm really going to prioritize my relationship this month, so I'm going to pour that energy into date nights or doing a relationship course or something like that. It could be that you really want to focus on your health, and so you're using that energy to learn and meal plan and exercise and batch cook a whole bunch of meals. Like you get to choose what you want to use this creative energy for. And people talk a lot about what do you want to create, what do you want to birth, what do you want to bring to life? And yes, that's part of it, but it maybe a more powerful question is like, which area of your life do you want to nourish? Because it's not just about creating new things all the time. There might be a bucket of your life that really needs some love or really feels like a priority for you. It might be pleasure. It might be, how much can I play and enjoy myself this summer? It doesn't have to be, I've got this energy, so I'm going to use it for work and serving everybody else. And yes, we get to do that because that's a really beautiful thing to do, but we don't have to spend all of our energy on everybody else. We get to keep some for nourishing ourselves and for doing the things that bring us joy. So yeah, summer is the time when your energy will be really high. Great time to exercise in a group environment because you get that connection piece. Great time to be doing your high intensity workouts. Like you've got the energy and that will feel really good. You'll probably find that your appetite is lower and you don't have as many cravings for food during this time. So it's a really, think about the food that we would eat in summer. It's more, light meals, fresh fruit and veggies, that kind of thing. Obviously also depending on what the season is in your external environment. Like you don't want to be eating salads and smoothies all day if it's snowing outside. So there's an adjustment that gets to happen throughout the year with that. You'll find it really easy to be productive, to tick everything off your to-do list. Your libido will be highest at this time in your cycle. So that's a really fun thing to harness. What else? Yeah, we find it easy to like focus and drop into that flow state, like whether it's in your work, whether it's getting stuff done around the house. It's a time when you're just going to focus really easily. You'll be really efficient. You'll be really productive. That's that more like masculine, expressive, getting stuff done energy. And that's a really satisfying place to be, to use that to get done the things that are the priority for you. Like we talked about play in the inner spring, and summer is all about pleasure. So we think about it like we're fertile, we want to make babies. So I always ask my clients, like, how can you invite a little more pleasure into your life in your inner summer? And you may notice like you're wanting to pay more attention to your appearance, or I notice I don't really want to clean my house in my inner summer, but I want to make it more beautiful. Like I'll find myself buying flowers or moving things around to make it more pleasing to my eye. And that's that inner summer energy. We want everything to be beautiful. We want to have our senses delighted. We want to be in a space of pleasure, like whether that's dance, whether it's sex, whether it's, eating really good food, whether it's taking 5 minutes to put some oils in your diffuser so that your office smells really beautiful. Like asking yourself, how can you just bring a little more pleasure in? Inner summer doesn't have to be all about getting stuff done. Like it can be really delicious.
I love that. I love the fact that we get to focus on pleasure because, as you mentioned, for us, most women, it can be really hard to do that when we've got so many other priorities, and we tend to play that martyr role that you mentioned before, which often sees that pleasure be the first thing that is sacrificed for most of us. So I love that. I love the whole concept, and I kind of feel like I want to be in that phase now. That's where I want to be right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone through the state of pleasure. What comes next?
Next season is your inner autumn. So that's about the week or so before your period. And that is the most misunderstood phase of the cycle. I heard a woman say the other day, and it wasn't in a situation where it was appropriate for me to interrupt, but I kind of wish I could have. I heard her talking about how she had cramps and bloating and breast tenderness and, just that stuff that we have to suffer through as women every month. And in my head, I'm like, no, we don't. Like, premenstrual symptoms are so common these days that we have been conditioned to think that they're normal and that we just have to suffer through them every month. And I get it because I did for a long time. Like the worst premenstrual symptoms you can imagine, I've had all of them. And I thought that was just my lot in life. Like my mum had that, my grandma had that. So that was just kind of, that's why I went on the pill, because it was so bad that I couldn't function. And it's not normal. Like what is normal is, like in this week before your period specifically, what is a normal kind of inner autumn sensation is feeling a little more sensitive, feeling like your emotions are a little heightened, feeling like your energy is lower, feeling like you want to take more time to yourself, feeling more reflective and like you want more rest and space and just a general slower pace, feeling perhaps not so like focused or energized. So maybe finding yourself a little more distracted or dreamy. That's totally normal. Having, what was I going to say? Like being a little more drawn to like slower exercise, feeling like your appetite is increased. That is what happens in your premenstrual phase. Like your body's metabolic rate actually increases. So there's a reason why you're hungrier. Feeling more drawn to like sweet and carbohydrate rich foods. There's a reason why your body asks for that during that time, just making sure you're nourishing those cravings with like whole foods, making homemade sweet potato chips instead of getting a takeout pizza, for example, or, dates or dark chocolate over a donut, because that's actually going to give your body what it's asking for. So those are all normal. Like, yes, we're not ovulating. We feel different. What's not normal is crippling cramps, feeling depressed, feeling anxious, having breast tenderness, having breakouts, feeling really bloated, feeling like really irrationally emotional and feeling like you can't control or express your emotions, feeling absolutely burnt out and fatigued. Like none of those are normal things to be experiencing every month. They're all your body's way of telling you that something needs attention, whether it's, your hormones, whether it's your stress levels. Your cycle is a feedback system and it's responding to so much. Like, are you sleeping enough? Are you drinking enough water? Are you nourishing your body well? Are you exercising enough? Too much exercise is also going to affect your cycle. Are you giving yourself space to feel and express your emotions and take care of your own needs. Because if you're bottling up your emotions all the time, your inner autumn is, if we think about, how the seasons work, summer is kind of everything is in full bloom, and then autumn is the harvest time. So we're like yielding what we've sown. Like if we were on a farm, that's when we'd be going and like harvesting all the wheat or whatever. That could be, maybe wheat doesn't harvest in autumn. I could be wrong, but you get my point. So we're kind of reaping the rewards or paying the price in our inner autumn for how we've treated ourselves and our bodies for the whole cycle up until then. So if you have been, to give the example, because I think this is a really common one, if there are things that your partner's been doing that have been like kind of irritating and not really jiving with you, and you've been sort of brushing them off for the whole cycle, all of a sudden in your inner autumn, it's kind of like the rose tinted glasses come off and you're like, I can't tolerate that. And that's when, because you haven't paid attention to it, you're going to snap, you're going to yell, you're going to express your emotions in a not very effective way. So PMS is not just a physical thing. It's also about, are you feeling resentful because you gave away all of your energy to everybody else this cycle and didn't prioritize your own needs, and now your body's slowing down and you feel like you've run out of time? It's a really common one for a lot of women. The stress one is huge. Stress is one of the first things to exacerbate PMS. And again, like the emotional stuff, if you're not taking care of your emotional well-being, that will manifest as cramps, long cycles, all of that. Like when I was healing my cycle after 8 years on the pill, I did all the right physical things and I healed a large proportion of my premenstrual symptoms, but I was still getting 10 days of like crippling cramps every single month. And the thing that finally shifted it for me was learning, like going to a somatic anger release workshop. So actually using, when I say somatic techniques are usually a combination of breath, sound, and movement. And the idea being that emotions are energy. When we don't express them, they sit in the body. And they, when we have all these stagnant emotions sitting there, especially around the pelvic and womb space as women, that's the opposite of the flow that we're wanting, right? So it's that dense, heavy energy, and it's going to manifest as pain. It's going to leak out in emotional outbursts because we haven't tended to it. And that's kind of the work that I do in my other area, which is my holistic pelvic care healing. I work with women on that kind of stuff. But so one of the, like, knowing that this is a time in the cycle where everything that you haven't sort of addressed is going to start to bubble up, you get to be prepared for that. And it's not just what are all of the things that I've done wrong. It's also reflecting on, what have I achieved this cycle? What am I celebrating myself for? What worked? What didn't? How do I want to align and course correct to come into my next cycle? So it may be, I'm feeling really burnt out. I didn't get enough sleep this month. What can I do now to nourish myself? It can be, for a lot of women, they'll get the nudge at that time, that job's not in alignment for me. I don't want to be doing that project anymore. That relationship's not for me. It's a time when it becomes very clear what's for us and what's not. And we're very connected to our intuition. And we're naturally doing this, whether we're aware of it or not. We kind of have that ruthless energy during that time where we just don't tolerate the stuff that's not for us. And so if we can recognize that that's what's going on during that time, it's that time of reflection, so we can choose what to keep and what to let go before we move into the release of our period again, then we can do that intentionally. So it's taking some time for meditation. Journaling is great. Spend time out in nature. Do some things to help you process your emotions. Dance is my absolute favorite. Like if you're feeling angry or sad or like any emotion, pop on some music that matches your mood. Tune into how you're feeling in your body. I'm feeling angry. It feels like heat. It feels like tension in my solar plexus. Okay, how does this anger want to move? And then put on some music and dance it out. And it's, as I said, like emotions are energy, and we just want to move them up and out of our bodies. They just want to be felt. They want to be expressed. Emotions always have a message for us. No emotion is negative. It's only how you express it, whether it's in an effective or ineffective way. And if you dance it out and kind of dissipate that initial charge of the emotion, then you come back to that space of clarity, and then you can have the conversation, make the decision. So that one's huge. I do this, like I dance every morning in my inner autumn, even if it's just for one song, and I get all my clients to do that, and that will revolutionize your experience of your premenstrual phase. So yeah, refining, editing, know that you're really connected to your intuition, know that your emotions are heightened, know that if you're experiencing any of those painful premenstrual symptoms that I spoke about, that's not normal, and you get to work with a practitioner or a coach or someone to support your body so that that's not happening for you, so that you can really feel good and thrive. That said, it is a slower time in your cycle. You will feel like your energy is dropping. You will feel like you're turning inward, and that's okay. So that's the time in the cycle where you don't want to be, committing to a social event every night after work. You might want to choose a yoga class or a walk out in nature over a HIIT class. You just want to allow yourself a little more breathing space and know that it's not like you're in a summer where you're going to be able to put 27 things on your to-do list and get them ticked off. You won't find it as easy to focus. You'll feel a little slower. Your strengths are different. Like as I said, your superpowers in your inner autumn are like editing and refining. And what happens with our hormones during this time means we actually see things that we couldn't see before. So you'll find that like any work that is attention to detail, just getting like admin stuff done, problem solving, editing, refining, all of that will come really easily to you. So that's the time when for me and my business, I'll go through and like edit course content that I've written. I'll get all my emails done. I'm in my spreadsheets. Like I'm doing all of that really detail-oriented, logical, focused, that admin-y kind of stuff. It doesn't require a huge amount of energy, doesn't require a huge amount of creativity, but it really is harnessing the strengths that I do have during that time. And yeah, so it's like, it's not all bad. There's a lot of beauty in the inner autumn because it is allowing us to see what's not working, to see where we haven't been taking great care of ourselves, to see maybe if there are things in our lives that aren't serving us anymore, and to let those go, to make space for something new, and also to slow down, to turn inward, to reflect, to spend a little more time alone, to nourish ourselves, and start to come into that phase of the cycle where we're in more of a replenishing energy. We're nourishing our bodies while our bodies are bleeding, and then we go out into the world and we have all the energy again, and the cycle starts again. So it's a time to really like up level your self-care, especially if you find this phase challenging. Leave more space in your schedule than you think you'll need. Get all your little to-dos done so that you have less to worry about when your period arrives, and just be really kind to yourself. You can feel really sensitive. You can feel really tender. It's easy to compare yourself to others during this time and to feel like you're not good enough. You may also notice that your inner critic is a lot louder during this time in your cycle. So this cycle might be feeling really tired today. I've hardly got anything done on my to-do list. I'm such a failure. I go on social media, I look at what everybody else is doing. She's launching that thing in her business. She's like doing all these things with her kids. And then we get into that comparison loop. And then our inner critic is heightened during that time. So it comes in and it's like, look at all the ways you're a failure. Why did you even think you could start a business? You're such a bad mother. You're such a failure as a woman. You ate that piece of cake at morning tea and you didn't go to the gym yesterday. And like that whole cycle can start to play out really easily in your inner autumn, that week before your period. So no, it's okay to feel more sensitive. It's okay to be slower. It's okay to not be getting as much done, and be aware that your inner critic can get a little louder, so that if that does start to creep in, you can go, oh, there's my inner critic. Alisha said that could maybe be a little louder the week before my period. It doesn't mean anything about me. If I just, maybe I have this is my go-to, I have a conversation with a friend. I'm on day 27 of my cycle. My inner critic's going crazy. It's telling me I'm a failure as a businesswoman, and why did I even think I could do this anyway? Could you please, what's the word that I want to say? I still lose my words sometimes after the concussion. Could you please give me a bit of a confidence boost? Like I need a pep talk. Like I'll ask my partner or a friend to gift that to me. because then I'm having someone be like, actually, no, like what your inner critic is saying isn't true. Or sometimes I'll have a conversation with my inner critic out loud and I'll listen to what it's saying and I'll say, actually, no, like look at all these messages I have from women saying how my work has helped them. Like you get to buffer yourself with that. And that's why I said, and this is the last thing I'll say on the inner autumn, but it's not only for looking at the ways that you want to adjust your life, it's also looking at all the ways that you're celebrating yourself. So if you start to feel that shift into your inner autumn, like say around day 20, day 21 of your cycle, where you start to go, oh, I'm feeling like I want to slow down. I'm feeling like my energy's dropping. Get out your journal, write a list of everything that you're acknowledging or celebrating yourself for. It could be, you know, I went to the gym all the times that I wanted to this week. I was really loving in that conflict with my partner, like the tangible and the intangible things, not only all the things that you ticked off, but it's the little things like, you know, I caught my inner critic when it was getting really loud and I was able to stop that thought pattern. You know, there's so much that we get to acknowledge ourselves for. Women are freaking amazing. And if you can take 5-10 minutes, write yourself a list of evidence as to why you were amazing that month, then when that inner critic does come in, it's not going to be able to take hold because you're like, no, look at me, look how amazing I am, look at all the things that I've done. And this can feel really challenging at first for some women, for a lot of women, but it's really a beautiful ritual to do in your inner autumn because it just kind of halts that cycle of feeling not good enough that we can sometimes feel then. So yeah, that's the cycle in a nutshell. You guys can tell I could talk about this all day, but I hope that that was helpful, and I can share with you. I've got a little PDF that kind of sums up what I've spoken about so that you don't have to try and hold it all in your brain. You can go back and look at it when you're actually in that phase of your cycle, and that's got the cycle tracker in it as well, so you can start to pay attention to your own cycle and start to notice these things with your own experience.
I am super grateful. What a huge bomb of wisdom that's just been dropped down here, because I'm just like, wow, I've learned a lot. I know, and I know a lot of the women will have learned a lot as well just from this short workshop that we've done or today. And I know we could talk for hours about it. I certainly could. What I'm going to do is I will post the links and the resources that we've just spoken about underneath this video when it's in the platform. I'll also post all of Alisha's contact details and her website and social media profiles in there as well. So anybody who wishes to reach out, attend a workshop, do one of her courses, or just do some one-on-one with Alisha, then that's the way to go. But certainly just want to say my heartfelt gratitude to you. Thank you for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure learning from you and hearing you speak with such passion and wisdom and knowledge. And I hope to have you back on her platform again very soon.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure.